You're listening to Florida Matters. I'm Matthew Petty. Like a lot of Americans, you may be in the middle of dry January, abstaining from alcohol for the month, and maybe a welcome respite after what can be a boozy round of parties at the end of the year. Dry January is a trend that started in the UK more than 10 years ago as a public health campaign. And these days, there are lots of options for people who want to be social and sober, and plenty of good health reasons to ditch the alcohol for a month or more. Coming up in about 15 minutes, you'll hear more about some of the potential payoffs of dry January and what it looks like from behind the bar. First though, Martin Luther King Day is just around the corner. And since its inception, it's been an opportunity for people to reflect on the legacy of Dr. King in a very practical way, through a day of service. You're about to hear what that means for one Tampa Bay nonprofit, hear about the needs across the region and what you could get out of acts of service. Briana Mays is a philanthropic engagement specialist for United Way Suncoast. Thank you for joining us, Briana.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And Ernest Hooper is the organization's Chief Communications Officer. Ernest, thank you.
Thanks for having us, Matthew.
Well, Briana, let me start with you. MLK Day was established in 1983 as a federal holiday and a day of service, so why roll this into a week of service?
So a lot of people get Martin Luther King Day off from work, and it's been seen as a day off for a lot of people. And we have seen in recent years that not everybody can come out because not only is it a day off from work, it's a day off from school, but people did want to volunteer. They did want to show up for their community. So we decided to lengthen it out a little bit, make it a week of service, provide some morning projects, some evening and afternoon projects, so that everybody would have the opportunity to make Martin Luther King a day on rather than a day off.
So tell me about what happens during that week of service. What are the opportunities for people who want to volunteer?
So there are a plethora of volunteer opportunities. We have Feeding Tampa Bay that we partner with every single year for many of our weeks of service. One major opportunity that they have is their warehouse food sorting. If you've never been to the Causeway Center, it is a brand new state-of-the-art facility. It is huge. It is gorgeous. And they have volunteers coming in and out of there all day, every day, sorting different food donations. That is one of the opportunities. There are other volunteer opportunities such as Trinity Cafe that is by Feeding Tampa Bay, where you can actually serve veterans, you can serve people who are less fortunate and literally fix their food, bring it to them, sit down, have conversations with them, and really be a part of the community.
Do you have enough volunteers to fill the needs that you have with United Way Suncoast?
Unfortunately not. You know, the need is so great within our region, within the 5-county footprint that United Way Suncoast has. There's so much good happening. There's so many people coming out to volunteer, but there is always a need for more volunteers.
Yeah, Dr. King said we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. Mm-hmm. And it's so amazing how these quotes that are 50 and 60 years old can still resonate.
And when you think about the specific needs for volunteers with United Way Suncoast, what are you looking at? Like, where do you need people to really step up?
Well, we tend to concentrate in a couple of different areas. One being food insecurity, which Briana's already talked about. Certainly education is another area where we love to see volunteers come out.
What kind of volunteers do you need with education?
Well, we partner often with Hillsborough Education Foundation, and they have a teaching tools store where teachers can come and get supplies that they need for themselves and for their students. And we always need volunteers to help there. Then we also like to connect with different companies and corporations in the community and create what we call kit bills. And imagine, Matthew, an assembly line of people lining up and putting different items into Ziploc bags that can then be distributed in the community. We find that a lot of our companies enjoy this type of process. It gives them a chance to involve a large group of employees, and it's very tangible. It's hands-on, and they are putting something together that they know is going to go out in the community and help people.
Now, Tampa Bay is coming off a tough hurricane season, so obviously you have there the need for food, housing, transportation, and employment. Is there something different about this year's week of service because of what everyone went through last year?
Well, October was, crazy. One hurricane, we had maybe 4 days, and then another hurricane. And in that week, we had a very large project that we partnered with Publix and Manatee County schools. And I was concerned because the weather was pretty inclement, that volunteers would not show up, that they would not be there. But my heart was so full because not a single volunteer dropped out. We were in the rain. This event is called Stuff the Bus. It is a food drive where students from Manatee County schools, community volunteers all come together and they help collect donations that all fund the only food bank in Manatee County. And this was so huge because none of the volunteers were deterred. All of them, they came out in rain jackets, rain boots, but they were determined to give back because they saw the need. And that is something that I have held on to hope for the weeks of service coming up. We know that there is a great need based on, what's just happened in our region. We need food. We need supplies. We need all of these things. And the volunteers are not only fully aware of that, but they are willing and ready and able to give of their time, their talents, their money, their effort to show up for Tampa Bay.
And Matthew, I think those who are fortunate enough not to be impacted are overflowing in gratitude and want to come back and help. And I think we've attracted some folks who may not have volunteered before. But to your point, at the same time, some of our regular volunteers did get impacted. Mm-hmm. And they have gone from providing help and support to needing support.
Help. Yeah.
And one of the keys for us is making people comfortable about seeking help. Sometimes it's hard to ask for help, especially if you've never had to ask for it before. In those moments where you may feel weak, you're actually being strong by making that determination to seek help and to reach out to your fellow community members.
Ernest, we are coming up on tax season. People can get some help preparing their taxes from United Way. Can you tell me a little bit about the program? Like, what do you need to qualify for it?
So we have our Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. We're talking about volunteering today. Those folks who help with our free tax preparation are volunteers trained by the IRS, and many of them have been engaged with us for several years. They've developed a high level of expertise and they do a great job. So this year, the threshold has been set at $79,000. Any household that makes $79,000 or less can get their taxes prepared for free. We'll start taking appointments for our VITA services on January 16th, and our VITA sites across our 5-county region, Hillsborough, Pinellas, Manatee, Sarasota, and DeSoto, will open on January 27th, and they will be open through tax season.
I want to ask you both, what will you be doing for MLK Day, and what do you think about when you reflect on his legacy? Briana.
So me personally, I will be volunteering. It is a day off for most organizations as well as our own, but I will be in the community volunteering as well at Feeding Tampa Bay. And to me, Martin Luther King Day means hope. I feel like it rings so true that there is such a hope because there's a willingness of people who are willing to, you don't often get a weekday off of work to get some affairs in order, to, run some errands. Instead, they take the time out of their day to give back to their community, to help connect themselves with an organization that has a meaningful mission, an intentional purpose, and they lock into that and they give of their time and efforts. And I feel like it is my responsibility to take part in that, not only to honor Dr. King and his legacy, but to continue to advance his agenda in that there is infinite hope for America and for Tampa Bay.
And Ernest, what are you going to be doing for MLK Day?
Well, I was going to sleep in, but after hearing Briana's words, it's clear to me I got to get out there and volunteer too. No, actually, Matthew, I'm going to be attending the Tampa Organization of Black Fairs annual MLK breakfast It starts at 6:45 a.m.
So no sleeping in for you.
Sleeping in for me. They start that early to remind us that at one time in these United States, Dr. King was not honored with the holiday. And so the event had to start at 6:45 because people had to go to work. And so they continue that tradition.
We've been speaking with Ernest Hooper, who is the Chief Communications Officer for United Way Suncoast, and Briana Mays, Philanthropic Engagement Specialist for United Way Suncoast. Thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
Matthew.
Still to come, if you're doing Dry January this year, you might have noticed a lot of bars and even bottle stores are embracing the trend, offering a way to be social and sober. Hear more about the benefits of going without alcohol for a month and see what the options are for people who still want to get together for a drink with friends. You're listening to Florida Matters. I'm Matthew Petty. Earlier this month, Surgeon General Vivek Murthy issued an advisory on a link between alcohol and cancer. He wants Congress to change the health warning labels on alcohol so consumers learn about the cancer risk. He told NPR that alcohol is the third leading preventable cause of cancer behind tobacco and obesity.
On alcohol bottles, there is in fact a Surgeon General's warning that mentions these two risks: drinking during pregnancy and drinking while operating a car or heavy machinery. And what I have called for in this advisory is that the Surgeon General's warning label be updated by Congress to include a third risk here, which is the risk of cancer. We've seen in the first two cases that when people were warned about these risks, they became part of our common knowledge. They started to shape our behavior. And what I want people to know here is that while we don't have data to give us a precise level at which every person can drink and minimize the risk of cancer, the exact level that's right for each individual does depend on their own risk of cancer based on their genetics, their family history, environmental exposures.
For more, I talked with Sylvia Crowder. She has a PhD in nutrition and is a researcher in Moffitt Cancer Center's Health Outcomes and Behavior Program. She says there's really no safe amount of alcohol.
When you really think about the hard numbers, we know that tobacco and obesity are, of course, the number 1 and 2 leading cause of preventable cancer, and then alcohol is number 3. But what's really the important takeaway from this is the recognition that alcohol is associated with at least 7 different types of cancer. And there's been some research to suggest that roughly 1 in every 6 breast cancer diagnosis has been attributed to some type of alcohol intake.
Crowder told me there's a bunch of other reasons why quitting drinking is a good idea.
Yeah, so there's a whole lot of benefits. We know that it can help improve sleep. We know that alcohol is a sedative, so it might help you fall asleep, but then it, of course, interrupts your sleep habits. It can also have a lot of mental health benefits, reducing anxiety, improving your mood, physical health benefits, so you have better liver function. And also, of course, if you cut out alcohol, you're also cutting out a lot of excessive calories. So it's very possible that you are able to either lose weight or maintain a healthier weight.
And if you want to see what it's like going without alcohol for a month, Crowder says you could give Dry January a go.
So Dry January, it started in the UK in 2013 as part of a public health campaign. And I think even before the Surgeon General's warning, which was very timely that it came out last week, it's been something that has been rapidly taking over the internet in terms of popularity. So I think a lot of it comes down to just individual beliefs, personal reasons, and just kind of, as you mentioned, like you just got off of the holidays where you're having Thanksgiving and all of the parties associated with Christmas and the New Year's. So just kind of resetting, taking a break to restart January. A lot of people have New Year's resolutions that they're trying to adhere to. And this could also be a springboard for individuals that are participating in Dry January just to assess their drinking habits.
Some tips for getting through the month successfully? Crowder says try to set realistic goals and track your progress. And try finding some like-minded people. Look on social media like Facebook or Instagram for communities to support you and keep you accountable. You can listen to the full interview with Moffitt Cancer Center researcher Sylvia Crowder at wusf.org. And now you're going to hear how Dry January is changing the way people drink and what the options are for people who want to be social and sober. Well, Matt Veronesi is the bar manager at Willa's Restaurant and Bar in Tampa. Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And also with us, Caitlyn and Mike Smith, co-owners of Herban Flow. It's a St. Petersburg bottle shop featuring non-alcoholic and functional drinks. Caitlyn and Mike, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So let me start with you folks. Caitlyn, Herban Flow has a couple locations in St. Pete now. You opened the first store in Tyrone in 2023. What was the spark that made you want to open a non-alcoholic bottle store?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of a mix of a passion project and us also wanting to have that accessibility of non-alcoholic drinks. I have endometriosis. I was diagnosed at 16, and part of that is figuring out what works with your body and what doesn't work. And alcohol was one of those things that did not work with my body. And my partner is almost celebrating 5 years of sobriety, and so much of socializing is based upon drinking, and we missed having that. So we were like, why is nobody doing this? So took that giant leap and wanted to have, everybody to have a drink at the table.
Mm-hmm. So, Mike, it sounds like you're both kind of coming at it from slightly different angles, but essentially it's like alcohol is not an option for either of you.
I'm going on 5 years strong, and it was an integral part of my day of like going to breweries, and like when I went on vacations I was trying to find the new breweries, and when I stopped drinking I lost all social aspect. I lost friends and everything. So really going full in on passion and creating a store like this kind of brought life back a little bit more.
Had you seen some examples to sort of spark that idea, or was this like something, okay, we need to do this, we don't know how it works, let's just try it?
Yeah, we were in Houston, so we did a road trip for like 18 months, and we're trying to figure out where we wanted to land. And we saw a bottle shop in Houston, but they only focused on like the NA side of being the beers, wines, and spirits. And then we slowly learned about like the infused side, the functional drinks. So that's when we were like, all right, that's something we use, so let's kind of come up with this unique concept.
And Caitlyn, for listeners who may not know what a functional drink is, can you be a little more specific? What's in it?
Absolutely. So it can be herbal infused. Basically, we kind of break it down into 3 separate categories. You have energizing, ones that can change your mood and make you social, and also help you wind down. So those can be like ashwagandha is a great de-stressor, ginseng to get you energized. So it's really how you want to feel, and being able to have that in a drink is really, really a neat option.
Matt, let me bring you into this conversation. What is Dry January like for a bartender? So, are you seeing more people asking for non-alcoholic cocktails, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the past 2 to 3 years, Tampa's actually expanded a lot. On a lot of our different restaurants are incorporating like non-alcoholic cocktails. And sometimes it's kind of hard because how do you make a non-alcoholic cocktail, It's very, very difficult to do, especially if you're not fermenting anything in a house, or, you're distilling something in a house and then removing the alcohol. It's almost like taking in like various different ingredients without making it a sugar bomb at the same time. It's a fine balance. But I think it's a really important category that's expanding a lot recently, and I think it should be. I feel like why weren't we having these categories for everybody rather than just alcohol?
Right.
Not everybody drinks.
And when you say a sugar bomb, is there a tendency, if you don't maybe know what you're doing, to just kind of load it up on sugar and then it becomes more like a smoothie or a frappe or something?
If you were to really, really think about it, like the first original NA cocktails were what? Shirley Temple's, Roy Rogers, children cocktails. How much sugar is in that? We all know a lot, right? So it's kind of finding the balance of incorporating, like teas rather than syrups, or infusions on different ingredients and such like that, rather than just throwing sugar into this and then throwing another syrup into this and then throwing, because like that sugar adds up. And then honestly, kind of goes back into even the alcohol drinking aspect of it, where if you drink so much sugar, you almost kind of do get a little bit of a hangover because you just have such a high content of sugar, and then eventually that all just dumps off after, your body processes it.
Do you remember the first time somebody asked you for a non-alcoholic cocktail?
Yeah, actually the very first time I actually worked at a bar, and I was like, I have Coke. I have Sprite for you.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I took over at Willa's and I started working there that I actually learned like what non-alcoholic cocktails were in beverages and mocktails, and I'm glad I got to really experience that side and not only see how it's made, but understand like the ingredients that are going into it.
Mm-hmm. So how has your bar adapted to Dry January, or just the kind of demand in general for things without alcohol?
Yeah, we lean into it. I think we've been featured maybe once or twice on our non-alcoholic selection. I think we have great cocktails, and I think one of the things that we do really well is we make our own ginger beer and tonic in house. And you can even take that and take it a next step forward, because you can change it up. You can add mint, you can add flavorings, you can really open up the door to have whatever you want, just because you have a good base to start with. So yeah, we heavily lean into it. We're actually doing a feature this January of, we have our tonic in-house. You can add whatever flavoring you want to it. Have it your way.
And ginger beer, that does have a little bit of alcohol in it, right? Like kind of maybe less than 5%, no?
It depends. There's traditional ginger beer does have like a fermentation process of it, but there are different ways you can incorporate ginger and flavoring without having that fermentation or alcohol. Like we make ours in house, and all we really use is ginger, lime, and a little bit of acid here and there just to kind of help balance it out. But other than that, it's fully non-alcoholic. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, it's probably ruined all other ginger beer for me. I every time I have ginger beer, I'm like, man, it's not like Willa's ginger beer. That's really good stuff.
I want to ask about non-alcoholic beer because that seems like it's a really booming part of the market. So, and I was looking at your website, you've got like more than 80 varieties of non-alcoholic beer. So how does that sort of play into what you all do at Herban Flow?
Well, and all the styles are out there now. You know, I think everybody's aware of like athletic brewing. They're kind of the big one. And they started the trend, but now you have all these other dedicated NA breweries out there. You know, and there's two ways they could do it. They can pull the alcohol out, or they can do an arrested fermentation. And I think you can really tell the difference between the two. And just like on talking about the sugars, a lot of the beers are either sour or fruited because that sugar provides more of a palatable experience. It doesn't just kind of drop off at the back of the tongue. So, you know, with this evolution, even since we opened, we've watched these companies just get better at making the product, redoing their formulation. So I'm excited to see all these alcohol distributors, their portfolios are growing. So this is the year we're going to start seeing it in the bars even more so.
Yeah. And you did a pretty big kind of tour, as you were saying, before you launched your business. When you go to bottle stores now, or just even grocery aisles, what are you seeing on the shelves? Are you seeing some of these products kind of get out more into the mainstream?
Absolutely. I would say even just your standard, you know, ABC Total Wine, they're aisles now. They're growing the category. When we were having discussions with them before, they were kind of scratching their head like, are you sure this is gonna take? Like, I don't know. But it's just, again, speaking to it, it's just growing. The people are wanting it. I think the interest and wanting to know more is just growing it.
Matt, it seems like though this is something that younger people are embracing. So what does that look like from a bartender's perspective?
Yeah, I'm here for it. I love it. I think, the generations we've been in recently is very health conscious, and I think that's something, you know, we should be taken seriously. I feel like health is an important thing. It doesn't matter your age or where you're from or anything like that. So why not, you know, take a month to cleanse yourself, cleanse your body, cleanse your mind. And for the people who haven't tried it before, I encourage them to do it. And you don't have to do it in January. Me and my wife were both in the bar industry, and January is a hard month for us to do it, so we're doing it in May. We're going to do it in May. We're going to have a full cleanse in May, and, you know, at the end of that month, you'll feel the mental clarity and, like, the lightness sometimes that you'll have, and then you can make that option of, like, oh, I'm going to continue to do this, or even you can just do it off and on. You could do 1 month on, 1 month off, 1 month on. Like, you should do it what works best for you.
When you think about non-alcoholic beers, that market has really exploded, and before that, there were IPAs, right? That sort of brought people back to beer in some ways. And you can go to a bar and you just, like, there's a dizzying array of taps. So what's that like, kind of trying to balance out the different variety? Because I imagine you could just have every beer under the sun on tap if you wanted to, or if you had the ability to, but you've got to kind of curate what you have on offer, right? So how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're talking about NA specifically, I think it's definitely good to have, like, one of each maybe. It depends if your clientele is, like, a heavy beer drinker or not. I definitely think that you should have a couple options, whether it be at least one like IPA, one lager. Even there's a really good porter right now that I found that's an NA. I think you should have options for them for sure. I don't think you need to have a whole tap full of it if you're like a full-on brewery, but you should at least be catering to that crowd and giving them options. You shouldn't just, like, throw one on there and be like, okay, that's good. You know, you're going to lose a lot of clientele by that, especially for the purposes of, you know, having regulars and people coming back. You know, the more options you have for them, the more chances you're going to have, like, oh, I really love that one. I'm going to come back for that one. And then even as you go through the seasons, you rotate them. The people that are staying with those NAs, they're going to be like, oh, I can't wait for the next NA rollout, you know, whether it be a different kind of IPA, a hazy versus, you know, like a non-hazy, or a lager versus, like, a Hefeweizen. You know, you can all make these through NA purposes, and I think it's good to have, like, a rotating selection.
So mocktails, what are some of your go-tos?
I always like a good mojito. You can make a lot of good mojitos without the alcohol now, and as they were saying across the table, that there are a lot of brands coming out that are non-alcoholic. Ritual, I think, is a great one. They're doing great products using agave to make theirs, even though there's no alcohol in it. It's almost like a tequila replacement, if you would, or even a mezcal. But I always like that one. Our ginger beer, we throw some mint in it and it almost has like a ginger beer mojito vibe to it. The tonic we make in-house, I think, is killer. I think everybody loves their tonic. You don't have to add flavoring. You can just enjoy it as is. Even if you don't want to add any flavoring, I encourage you to try it because it's just like you're not opening up that door to so many other things you can try.
Now, Caitlyn and Mike, the High and Dry Festival is coming up. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so if you've ever been to a beer fest or a wine fest experience, and that's something that I really miss. And the amount of options that are available are exploding right now. So what we did is we invited about 70 of our favorite brands to come on in, and everyone's going to get a shot glass, and it's unlimited samples for 5 hours. That's at Coastal Creative, January 25th from 12 to 5. And we're going to have the whole downstairs is cannabis infused. We're going to have the atrium, which is the beer, wine, and spirits. And then the upstairs is going to be split amongst adaptogens and kava and then functional mushrooms. We're going to have education stations within each category so that way you can go up and actually like learn about what the ingredients in there, put your hands on the mushrooms, learn about lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, because that's the biggest question. You know, even at Herban Flow, we're usually a therapist or a consultation for that first visit. It's usually like 30 minutes long because it's just so much new stuff. Majority of our sales is on the functional side. So we're like, all right, how can we get everyone to try all this together? So 5 hours, unlimited samples at Coastal Creative.
Just bringing it back to Dry January. So do you find that folks who are coming to your store, are they going straight for the kind of functional drinks if they're Dry January folks, or are they looking at the non-alcoholic beer selection, for example?
I think a majority are first coming in thinking they want to replace that beer or wine or spirit, and then they see how much other offerings there are, and they kind of deviate from that. They might get one option, but a majority are like, oh, I can still get that flavor profile of a margarita, but have an effect, or an old-fashioned and have an effect. So I think it's bringing them in for curiosity, but once they're in, it's branching out and seeing what really works for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've been speaking with Caitlyn and Mike Smith, co-owners of Herban Flow. It's a St. Petersburg bottle shop featuring non-alcoholic and functional drinks. Thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
And Matt Veronesi, bar manager at Willa's Restaurant and Bar in Tampa. Matt, thank you.
Of course, thank you for having me.
The producer is Grayson Doctor. Engineering support from Blake Bass and Gio Garvin. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and watch on YouTube. I'm Matthew Petty. Thank you for listening.